Enabling the monster weapon by myself. I wrote this topic forum post and I'm including the link to how to bring back monster weapons in the maze module and others. I've already done a video on this for the maze and for arcade platformer base. I edited this post and wrote up the script for the edit to adventure. In adventure, when you edit, you're going to do handle object collisions adventure base 2. That's located in your subroutines folder. For your module you're using, I suggest making a copy of it. Make a copy. I renamed it Do Handle Object Collisions Adventure EX. You'll notice in the script at line 153, the original, it'll be blank. Line 152 will have not player monster collision. So we're going to copy and paste this script I included in the post. I've also included a copy of this in your folder. For now, we're going to destroy object. I'm going to take that comment out because it's a monster weapon. We want it to destroy when it collides with the player. This is useful for like fireballs or other objects you want to disappear when they collide with the player. If you just want to see how this is done really quickly, you can watch a 30-second video in the maze module version of this that's located at this link. So the forum topic discusses how I cover how to enable the monster weapon bit in maze arcade platformers and this adventure type module right here. Quick sidebar really quick. Why the heck is it called Adventure Base 2? I mean, there's no Adventure Base 1 or Adventure Base. Alright, back to it. First, I looked for it, there's none, so yeah. So you can rename yours Do Handle Object Collisions Adventure Base if you like. Mine, I'm just renaming it like this. Edit it and copy paste a code. Take out that comment. If you want, you can eventually put that in. Like I said, that's the part that handles when the monster weapon destroys itself, colliding with the player, or not. Alright, so we're going to talk about the script and tear it down and talk about every line of code in it. So in the script, you'll notice a few important things. Object flags X and this bit check. This bit check right here is for the monster weapon bit check. In Nightmare Castle Development Episode 5, I show something like it called Object Bit Flag List. So I'm going to show a copy of this list. You can download it from this link that I'm including. So in this list, it lists off the bit flags. So if your bit flag was like just the one, it would be like the persistent bit flag. Player weapon, monster weapon pickup, power up, target type, and NPC. If you were to have multiple flags checked, persistent and player weapon, persistent, stuff like that together, you might want to double check what that might be. Um, so there's a tool right here you could just use. Figure out the number. You could either do that randomly or figure it out this way or by yourself. Even if this doesn't really help, it'll give you an idea of hex binary bit positions, the numbers it would be the equivalent of. Looking at the list, you'll see the number 4 monster weapon. You'll also notice the line right there in the code. It's identical. That's because that's the check for the object bit. So first it checks for player and monster weapon collision, because player is the object at the top of the list of bit checks in this file. So that's where it's located. It's doing player versus weapon. Then it branches to a different location in the script based on if it is or isn't that bit. If it's not player, then jump to it's not player monster weapon collision. So there's that. There's that. So if it's not that bit, and I've said before, it's kind of like reversed when you're doing these bits. That's the odd part. It's kind of like almost like backwards. So it's not that bit. It is the player monster weapon collision, because as I said, it's almost like backwards logic with those. And then if it would be or whatever, it would continue the code to say that it's not the player monster collision. Monster weapon collision. So then after that, when it says that it actually is the collision, you're going to do the collision. It's going to get the other collision box. There's a subroutine for that. Then it's going to do the subroutine. I can't find it. I don't know where the subroutine is for this. I looked all over. But it's got to be there if it's doing it. Then do compare bounding boxes and the subroutine right here for it. So it jumps to that subroutine. It does all this. And then it returns to this subroutine. Then after it does this subroutine, or it does that, it goes to the next one. So if you're doing this one, it does that. I'm sure there's an RTS there. And this one, there's an RTS we just showed and that whole thing. So it does this whole thing. Then if there is none, it'll hit it, do the collision. If not, skip collision. So do collision, transfers X into A. X would be the other object. Other object is that monster weapon that we were doing flag for and all that stuff, checking for. So that's transferred into A. Gonna destroy the monster weapon. Now it's loading into X, self object. Self object up here is player. So it's actually easier to write it as that. So then self object. And that would be the other object. Sorry, I didn't edit this before. Anyway, so it does that. That's do handle her player. So it's saying there's the collision, destroys monster weapon, loads the self object player into X, says to do that collision. So then when you go and you check that do handle her player subroutine, it's going to show a lot of references to the X object. X object is self object, which is the player. After doing that, it jumps to done. Done is down here. Does all that. If it's not the monster weapon, player collision, say it's a monster colliding with its own weapon, nothing happens, it just skips it. Alright, to sum that up, I have no idea where the player collision versus monster weapon would call for that get other collision box subroutine because I can't find it. I have no clue where it is. So it's still kept in there. I just don't know where the subroutine is. After that, it comes back, does the jump to the subroutine for do compare bounding boxes. That's located in the game subroutines folder. You'll notice the RTS return to the subroutine in each part of the subroutines because they bounce back to this. Let's see. It's after each outcome. I use the word outcome often, usually when I'm doing this, because it's my way of saying like it's the outcome of that subroutine, like or branch to the next thing or something, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing, etc., etc. So like the outcome of this here would be to do this, and then it tells whether it's the player monster weapon collision or it's not. And then the outcome of that would be jump to done after it is. And if it's not, then just skip this whole section and go to here. Something like that. So it either does the collision or it doesn't. And player is the self object, monster is the other object. Or monster weapon is the other object. Code's pretty much documented and says exactly what it does. Like I said, the destroy object is the destroy object for the monster weapon. So you're going to want to make sure that gets destroyed if you want the weapon to destroy when it makes contact with the player, or else it like just keeps going, or just, I don't know, keeps flying around in circles or something. So you can comment or uncomment this line as you desire. That's about it. That's the end of the first section. Make sure when you rename the code and you edit the code that you change it with the original script. So in your script, you're going to go to handle object collisions. It's located right there. And you're going to replace it with the one we just did. So in my case, it's do handle object collisions, adventure EX. And you can double check that by clicking on edit. Edit will bring up the file. And as you see, this is the one we were just editing. So what I'm going to do is, in my case, I'm going to bring up that folder, copy that, and replace the one that's in this folder for you, because I'm going to give you a copy to download for yourself. Alrighty, we're on section 2, Spawn a Monster or Monster Weapon by Artix. Artix is the creator of Dungeons and Doom Knights. Alright, Dungeons and Doom Knights, recently rated #1 in the adventure RPG category, I believe, in the Homebrews top 500. Alright, so we got Artix has a code that he had, let's see, help from Dale Coop when he was creating Dungeons and Doom Nights, and Cutter Cross helping figure out the bug that he could not spot in Discord. And I believe that that was probably because I had the same problem at one point with setting this. If you don't set this default monster, you'll have a lot of weird issues if it ends up like loading up that default and stuff. So he says first you're going to want to take a look at this code, and he explains how the code works. He says spawn a monster, it loads into the accumulator, the object x high from x, which that would be, you know, the monster's location for x, store that into temp from the accumulator. So it loads it into the accumulator and stores from the accumulator into temp. The number from object x high, and then it does it for the y. So you got that in temp too. So you got the x, y coordinates. That way you can do the x and y. Alright, so then the format is create object. It gets the x, the y, the object type, the action step, the name table. So in this case, it's create object temp1, that's the x, temp2, that's the y, the temp argtix variable, the action step, which is 0, and the current name table. Alright, so what if you want to spawn a bunch of monsters and make maybe different monsters? You know, the limited number of those precious action steps is, you know, quite, well, limited. You only get 8 or something like that. So one way of doing this would be to take a peek at which monster is trying to spawn, and then change the ID of it based on that. So here's the code that he was using for Chrono Knight. But also, I guess, some of the code was for Dungeons and Doom Nights. Alright. So please understand, I have made videos and a forum topic on AI steps to create a monster. Usually it uses like the user screen variables and stuff like that. This one has a built-in check for objects on screen that limits the number based on the numbers compared. So here was the link that had the monster action step. I needed to add X to the object type, so it's now object type comma X. So when you throw in the code right in here, this is object type comma X. Alright, so before you copy paste this, you're going to need to add temp argtix variable to your 0-page RAM in the settings of your project. So we go to 0-page RAM, you hit add, and you name the bottom one temp argtix. And you'll start at 1. Leave it at 1, leave it at that number, then you can just hit at the X. So that's added. Alright, so you want to copy paste this. Make sure to add that X that I was talking about. So what I did in here was make a post that had fixed the typo, so you could just copy paste this that I made. Copy that into a new ASM file, or as I've shown before, you can just use a blank one. So here I copy pasted it with a few of the changes for my game. This is for the example that we're using for it. So explosion is going to be on 15. So if you look under game objects, game object number 15 is the monster poop explosion. So by default, it'll actually make that if it doesn't get the actual right monster. So say I want to spawn the NPC to spawn something. This NPC is not numbered on this list. That's object number 16. I started to check at number 17 for the slime. I have it spawning this little baby eye. That's what the baby eye does basically. I just have it flying across the screen currently just to test it out. I don't really have anything as a monster. Flies across the screen to stop moving when it first spawns, so it'll spawn, it'll just sit there for a second. And then after it sits there for a second, it'll move in a random direction and then it'll go to first. So after a certain amount of time it'll go to first. Right now I just want it to shoot across the screen, so I'm gonna make it take forever to get to that point. That speed is 62, so it's gonna go pretty quick. Alright, so I'm gonna close that. That's the baby eye. So the slime, what I did here was actions. You're gonna want to put it AI behavior 4. So like now I'll show in the script. If you go to script settings, I put AI behavior 4 AI spawn monster. If you go to that script, I'm just going to show that I did put it in there in the AI scripts. AI spawn monster. So that's the script. Go to edit. That's the script I'm showing. Alright, so what it does first is it counts the objects. This is the bit, as we were talking about earlier, about the bits. Before, the one was over here. That was the bit for monster weapon. But if you look at that list again, that's the bit for the monster. So this is check for the monster. If you have 4 monsters on the screen, don't spawn monsters. It's branch carry set. No spawn too many. So it's kind of like a jump. It's not more like a BNE or like a it's almost like a jump. It's like a branch if equal kind of deal. But it's also like a jump at the same time. Because it can go over a longer distance, but not too long, I don't think. I haven't tested how far it can actually jump. But this is definitely longer than, even with all this, like not commented out, it's quite a jump that a normal branch not equal would only jump from maybe like somewhere like this far or something. A little bit further, maybe to like here. Anyway, that's something else. So then it goes, sets the default. We already talked, that's the explosion. Then it checks the object type. Now we, like I said, we added the X in there. Without that, it wouldn't check and it would just spawn the explosion. Alright, so then it says, is it slime? If it's a slime, it does the opposite. Branch not equal. So it's not the slime. Go here. And if it is a slime, it spawns this. I don't know why it goes backwards, but I guess it's one of those branch not equal backwards branch equal things. Anyway, so it does that. So then we have this jump to spawn a monster. So it's loading the number, which is 18. Let me close this real quick. That's number 18, so it goes 15, 16, 17, 18. It's number 18, it loads it into temp articks. Then it jumps to spawn a monster. Spawn a monster down here loads the object high X again, like he was talking about earlier. That's in temp 1. The Y in temp 2 creates the object based on what we were talking about earlier. Temp 1, temp 2, temp articks, which is 18, action step 0, current name table. And then it just repeats the code basically next time they do it. So you can check that out right now. I can name the project label for it. Call it Spawn a Monster. Just spawn a monster, I guess. So then if you look at this again, slime, what it does is stop moving, moves in a random direction. After that, it goes spawn monster. And then it goes to first after timer 4 is elapsed. Alright, testing this out. And you notice they don't keep spawning more monsters because now there's 4 monsters on the screen. Now you notice it's move opposite direction and reverse direction. That's why they're bouncing all over the place. So maybe we'll put destroy me down. So when they run into something, they just pop. Immediately they just go. Right, saving it, just switch to something else, test it out. Hide behind something because they're gonna go all over the place. See, they keep spawning them because every time they do, they make 2. When it makes 4 monsters on the screen, then, you know, 1 disappears, they can make another one. 1 disappears, they can make another one, etc. And they just keep making them. They keep destroying themselves and they keep making more. So this is useful for also making monsters. Or monster weapons. So you just would check, like, the bid against monster weapons. You might want to put a lower monster number there. I wrote all that in here. You just lower the limit because you don't want to have that many monster weapons in the screen because then it's going to count like your normal, say, 4 monsters you have, maybe 3 or 4 monsters, and then you're going to have these, so it'd be 5. Like, so that would be at least 5 things, 6 things on the screen at one time. Plus the player, plus if the player makes something like a weapon or something like that, you could see where it could slow down and really bog down the game. That's why you'd want to limit things like this. So we have another thing in here that might actually help with that. So originally the code, first of all, we're going to check just the rest of this code out. I commented out these by default because he put these in here as examples for his game. So I put these as examples for, you know, this module, like what you might want to use for yours. You could change these numbers around. This is just an example. It's pretty much explained, you know, if you're looking at the video right now, you can pause the video and check out stuff like there's the slime. There's like 15, 16, 17, slime 17. Maybe I would be 18. So yeah, 8, 17, 18. So like you could check that out later and stuff. And then basically I have it commented out all this extra stuff he's got, these examples, because you could just replace this with something like that you might want to use. And you'll notice it's basically just the same as this. Then it will go to this check. And then you could do another one of these. End it with this, and it goes to that one. And then it eventually, as long as you end it with that plus, the branch not equal, it'll go to the next one, etc. Till you get down to the spawn a monster. And then it'll create the one based on the number that you loaded in. Alright, so we got that going on right now. Now I was saying about how we can save memory and make the game run better when you have even more monsters in the screen and objects in the screen. So the final part I'm going to do, part number 3, and then we're going to bring it all back around. So technically, part number 4 is the last part. This is the last trip we're going to do to the forum on these. Then we're just going to show how everything works. So we're going to do preventing slowdown. Frankengraphics talks about how to prevent slowdown in your game. This code, even though it's for I think a slightly older version of NESmaker, this code actually works in every version. It's pretty universal. We're going to test it out. So first you identify what objects you're using as projectiles. You know, for me that would be like monster weapons we can use as projectiles. So we can have the monster weapons, or in this case, what is that? The baby eye is a projectile right now. That's number 18. Alright, so number 18 in the monsters, and then the monster weapons, we want to ignore those collisions. So it says to open the handle tile collision ASM. Right after line 1, you put something like this. So we're going to do that. Alright, you'll notice here it says by default that it is subroutines do handle tile collisions. Now, if you've watched the earlier parts in this, that would be episode 1, parts A, B, and C, we talk about that you do not want to edit these. Usually you want to make a copy and edit the copy of it. But because this is defined, we can easily do that without even changing the defines out. Because it's like literally, it's right here in the script. When they're already defined in here with the label and everything, we can just change what it is. So, I'm going to copy that file, do handle tile collisions. It's in game subroutines. I'm going to make a copy of it and put it in here in my subroutines folder. There's the copy. I'm going to rename the copy. So it's going to be Adventure EX for me. And then I'm going to reassociate the copy in here in the script settings. So we go to script settings, back down here again. Handle tile collisions right there. Do handle tile collisions, Adventure EX, there it is. Hit edit, there it is. Now he wants us in the beginning of the file to make a slight edit. So I'm going to write like, here is check to prevent Slowdown. All right, first we're going to use the monster weapons as an example. So we check the object flags. Here, actually, we're going to save that for later. I'll put that down here. Comment that out for now. Okay, for his code, we got object type. It's comparing the number. So it's checking, actually, it doesn't want your, was it 3? 1, 2, 3, your melee weapon to check that. So that's pretty good. You don't want your melee weapon to check that. So we could do that. Branch if not equal. Update horizontal position, update vertical position. Turn to subroutine. Go back to the check. Let's see if that works. No, and I don't see those subroutines on here either. I even look in the subroutine folder and I don't think they're in there either. Those are probably old subroutines. So I'm going to try to do it without that maybe. Let's see if it'll work. Alright, so as you see, without anything there, it still works. Doesn't need to update it or do any of that stuff. That's like old code probably. Sometimes there's a lot of old code that's comment needs to be, checked out, and you gotta check your subroutines, and there's other locations and things might be referenced, so they might not be. Things might have been changed. So that makes it so the sword is actually ignoring the tile interactions by default. If you wanted the pickups, or if you wanted, say, the monster weapons, you could do something like this too. So you'd load into the accumulator the object flags X, and then you check that for the monster weapon. And then if it's, same deal as right here. So now the monster weapons should ignore that. For testing purposes, I'm going to make the baby eye a monster weapon. Then I'm going to also change the code that spawns the monster to check just for now against monster weapons and only spawn 2 monster weapons. So it should essentially, as on the screen, basically look like almost the same thing that was going on before. And I believe Joe was saying something in the Facebook about not putting the X in there for certain scripts that don't loop. So because the script doesn't loop, I think at that point, I'm gonna try it without that. Ooh, maybe not. Or you said something about it being corrupted based on the order you do it, maybe? Like, like it's losing all its collisions. All the tile collisions are messed up. So I'm going to take that out for now. Just do this object type check. See what happens. Alright, I wrote in ignore 18. And look at that. He's ignoring the tile collisions with the solid, so it's not destroying itself in the solids anymore. It's destroying itself in the screen edge collision. So that means it's working. It should still collide with the player and harm the player too, because he's not a tile collision, he's a object collision. Just trying to see if I can get it to... There we go. He hit the player. Alright. So those will work. It's just that for some odd reason, it gets corrupted when I try to use like a check for like the object flag or something. Like even if I'm not checking for X, maybe I'm checking for temp or something like that. I've tried it with a bunch of them and it's not working. I've tried removing it, as you saw. So I would just do it for now by object numbers. So for now, I'm just going to keep this in here and put some comments in the code like ignores the baby eye. So I mean, this is a long video. You can pause certain spots and go back and change the numbers in these codes to reflect what's in your game. Just ignore melee weapon. And as a bonus there, your melee weapon, you can even have it destroy when it contacts the enemy or not destroy when it contacts the enemy. But then right here, it'll definitely not destroy when it's a tile collision with like a solid. So even if you put down like it destroys itself in a solid collision, I'll show one more time because I didn't do that with the weapon. If I face this, the weapon will not destroy itself. Even if I put in the code, because it's on a solid collision, that's a tile collision. Even if I put something in here like destroy me, or sorry, solid object, destroy me. Save, test it out. You're going to notice that will not destroy me. So make sure that, do you understand that that overrides the default destroy me by doing hold on, I'm saving it, sorry. By doing this. Because that means it's not having any tile interactions. Which is kind of good because then it saves. But like I said, I'm trying to do it with whole bits. So maybe I could try to figure out I can come back to this later, but for now, this is what we got. About 30 seconds left of this video I'm trying to get in. So anyway, you would save that. You already have that saved in there. That's a good example. I can include this extra file in here for you as well for download. It says you can save a copy. Make sure you save it in your project settings. Make a copy, you keep your original. It should work. You can do this. Check all this later. Alright, I guess I'm going to have to go over a couple seconds now. Anyway, so I come back around to the last little part so you know how this works. Yeah, count objects works. Prevent too many on screen. You can compare it to that number. Branch carry set. So you could have like it count a certain number of weapons on the screen. Spawn a weapon. Have a monster spawn a weapon. When it's destroyed, it could also leave a poof possibly. So what you do is something like a collision edit, like up here. Destroy object. You could have it like either make a subroutine, jump to that subroutine, or something like that, or just totally write in here like, create object. And then you could do like, it's got the X and the Y and stuff like that. It can maybe create it at the location where it is, stuff like that. Or you, like I said, you create a whole subroutine or something like that. Put that in there. That's also something we can do some other time. So anyway, yeah, I believe that's everything. So you can see how you can save a lot of memory and fit more things on the screen doing this. All right, thank you. Have a great day.